Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk animated shows and movies here, especially Miraculous Ladybug and The Owl House. Find everything about us at overlyanimated.com. I'm your host, Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And Alex Bonilla.
Hey.
Today we'll be talking the first season of Pantheon, which is a new show on AMC Plus and High Dive that just ended. Its finale just aired, and we've watched it, and we'll be talking about the entire season here today, starting with the spoiler-free section. Here's an introduction to Pantheon, based on a collection of short stories from author Ken Liu about uploaded intelligence, or human consciousness uploaded to the cloud. Pantheon focuses on Maddie, a bullied teen who receives mysterious help from someone online. I'm thinking that probably many people have not seen the show yet, considering it is an AMC Plus show, which is
heard about it even.
Or heard about it.
Or heard of AMC Plus even.
Yeah, I was about to say I had barely heard of AMC Plus before. So I will say that episode 1 is available for free on YouTube or on demand. So you can check out the first episode of Pantheon. In addition, we will be spoiler free here in the beginning. I encourage you to keep listening to hear our thoughts on the show. I will say at the top, I love this show. I think it's really incredible. So I highly recommend people check this out. I think probably a lot of people not having seen it yet listening here. So I can either stop, go watch now, or keep listening. We'll try to convince you in the spoiler free section. And then eventually we'll get into spoilers. Those timestamps will be in the podcast description when spoilers start. Also, if you're just listening, I will say very clearly when spoilers start. This is a very heavy serialized show. I'll also say this is an hour-long animated drama. So if you're a frequent listener to this podcast, that should be enough to convince you probably immediately. This is like one of the handful of hour-long American animated dramas we've ever gotten.
But by hour long, you mean like with commercials, right?
Yes,
because
with
aren't
commercials.
they like 40 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, they're like 45 minutes.
Yes. Exactly. It's a sci-fi technology show, really good. So, we'll go over it, but, uploaded intelligence, if that seems interesting, we'd recommend checking it out. And I think that's basically everything here to cover at the beginning. So it was an 8-episode season and it just finished. So we're going to start with some spoiler-free thoughts on Pantheon. We will try to, keep everything to a minimum. I think it's pretty hard to talk about things spoiler-free for this show. It's extremely serialized. I have a lot of spoilers. So, however we want to try to get into this, Michelle, what are your overall thoughts on this first season of Pantheon?
I really like this show also. I feel like my like getting into Pantheon was basically being on Twitter, seeing some of the people who worked on the show tweeting about it when it first came out and the first couple episodes dropped, being like, I'm so glad our show's out in the world. Like, this is such a great show, you guys. I was struck by the poster art, just like, because you just see like the main character and then like her avatar for being online. And I was like, oh, it's like a lady and it's like maybe sci-fi technology. So I'm like, okay, this seems, if they hadn't used that person, I might not have been as excited. If it was just some guy, I would have been like, okay, maybe sometime. But I was immediately very excited. They chose the right character to highlight. And I think I saw the first 2 at once and I was like, I went from like, oh, this is like such an interesting like concept to like, oh my God, this is really stressful, to like, oh my God, this is so smart, but also extremely stressful, but I love it. Give me more stress. And that's a lot of what this show felt like, especially the first half, I would say. But it's such a strong show. I love how smart the writing is. I was saying this to Alex at some point that like, I love that we have this kind of focus on an animated adult series that's not a comedy and also is not related to anything superhero adjacent, because there's a lot of like interesting superhero animated shows that are either have come out or are going to come out soon. And I think that's great. I'm glad they exist, but also things besides being superhero concepts should also exist. Yeah. So that was one of the things I really liked, just that this was more of a sci-fi feel. More of its own thing, a bit more refreshing in my opinion. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. It is like you're gonna be thinking some deep thoughts with some of these concepts, I would say, while you're watching, but that's part of the fun. You chew on a little nugget after every episode and be like, oh man, what if this did happen? That'd be a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all that. And in terms of the superhero thing, yeah, totally. We were talking about this sort of thing on the Arcane podcast, Beatrice and Ali, and it was like at some point I noticed, like, I think the only original, like, not adaptation like adult animated show we've ever gotten is Undone. Like, I literally can't even think of the second one.
Seriously.
And this is an adaptation, but it's it's like the most original concept, like, along with that show, I feel like, that we've ever seen. So I totally agree with that. And yeah, the superhero shows are great, but it's so nice to see something like so original, even if it's based on short stories, which are also extremely original themselves. Alex, your thoughts on this Pantheon season?
Yeah, I had a really good time with this show as well. It's a delightful surprise, given the lack of buzz around it, really. But yeah, like I think the serious tone of it that it maintains throughout the entire season in itself is a breath of fresh air, given like how much like sci-fi comedy and animated sci-fi comedy we get. Like to have one that like actually deals with the serious ramifications of some of these things. It feels nice to like see play out like this. I enjoy the fact that while it lets you in pretty early on that there's it's bigger than this one family, like just from the log line you read, right? Like there's someone online that's helping out. So like it starts a little bit small and it keeps expanding its scope. The stakes gradually increase. I think it does a really good job of like maintaining that momentum through the entire season through to the finale, which I think makes it so that it's a drama that like really keeps you invested all the way through. I think that they did a pretty good job balancing their storylines, because there's a couple of like main characters you're following, and I think that is also like a task to make sure that you care about all the sides equally, and I think that they do a good job with that. I think it just has a very sharp look to it. Yeah, it was really exciting to follow this through. I actually was a little bit surprised, that there's a lot there that makes me excited for a season 2. So I'm happy to see that they've done like the work to build you up there as well. Yeah, so this was a very fun, exciting, and surprising experience, getting to enjoy this little hidden gem. I hope more people check it out.
Awesome, definitely. And season 2 is confirmed, so if you're one of those people that only wants to watch things if they are guaranteed a conclusion, I do think probably the show will conclude with season 2, but we'll see. We can talk about that. But we are getting an 8-episode second season as well that it was initially greenlit along with season 1. But yeah, I totally agree with everything you guys said. Just Pantheon, one of the most kind of interesting and engaging shows of the year, of the last few years I've seen, live action or animated, like anything. I really enjoyed watching it week to week. It's really ambitious, this show. Like, I think it's really wild at times, like what's going on. Mostly that's good. I'd say 90% that's good. I also think it's very messy this season, which is kind of part of the fun.
It is part of the fun. They have big dreams for this show. You gotta swing sometimes to see if it lands.
It is exploring the mess of what would happen if this was allowed.
It's a big messy question and concept.
And part of it is the show itself sometimes gets that territory. But it's like I have like a ton of highlights I want to go over, and also a ton of criticisms. But all of the criticisms are like fun. Like I have fun with all of them. They're not like things I'm angry about. Like I personally have a ton of fun with this show, and I think a lot of people got very stressed out. Like Michelle said, I feel like that's probably a reaction.
It's fun to be stressed.
Yeah, I think it's
really
that for me. It's like fun stress,
Yeah.
like mostly fun, a little stress. I think other people might have a more stressed reaction. I'm not sure, but either way, it's like super engaging, and I totally agree, super thought provoking. This show got me thinking about these philosophical concepts that I'm somewhat prone to think about anyway. But not many other shows like launch that with these concepts and how they're explored throughout the season. And the show explores a lot of it, and some things it doesn't explore. And it's like we could talk about that. Like we could spend this podcast talking about philosophy the entire time. I assume we won't, but that is that type of show. It's that like intelligent and thought provoking, and it's also just incredibly fun outside of that. So really couldn't recommend this more highly, especially if you're into any sort of sci-fi or technology show, which I am, and this is my type of show, and I basically watch every show that's like this on TV. Almost all of them are live action. There might be comparisons to be made. I guess, for instance, Westworld. I think if you like Westworld, you'll definitely like the show. I think the show is not as ridiculous in some ways as Westworld. In some ways, it is as ridiculous.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
It goes a little bit more of a focused Black Mirror.
You got a Black Mirror, you got San Junipero type concept going on. Also, one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Robot. I would say if you like Mr. Robot, you would like this for sure. This is less gritty than Mr. Robot, but also a lot of things reminded me, including like one of the highlights of the season is a mystery throughout the season that you will probably love, as we probably loved, and we'll talk about that.
Also, a lot of hacking.
Yes, there's scenes where there's people hacking stuff. It's like, okay.
On keyboards, if you like that, because we all do that. So it's like you're really there in the show.
One extended hacking sequence involving moving a phone via vibrations. It's so
riveting, though. You're like, is it going to make it? Is it going to work?
That was one of the most wild ones. Okay. But yeah, so other spoiler-free things other than wild opinions. Michelle, any hints of your favorite parts?
How do I hint without it being like a full-on spoiler? There's some like gory imagery that I did not expect, but man, I don't think I'm gonna forget it like ever. And I love horror, and this is a type of horror, yeah. And I love that. And again, that's the kind of like, you don't see that in a lot of shows, especially not animated shows. So I love that they had the freedom to go there. And I think that's one of the things animation's great for. So more scary visuals, please. More things that just like are seared into your mind forever because they're so uncomfortable, but also so fascinating.
So fascinating. And I also, in terms of the animation use, I think a fight we just saw in the finale is one of the best uses of animation. We can talk more about that.
They had so much fun planning out how that was going to be choreographed. You can tell just watching it.
Alex, for you, any vague highlights?
What I will say is that, at least for me, the episode 1 is good. But I don't think I really got hooked by this until the end of episode 2 and episode 3. Like that especially episode 3, which I'll just say out front is my favorite of the show. Like I think that is a good encapsulation of like how well the show does at balancing the three main characters you're following and like gets all of them. And one of them has like a lot of interesting imagery. One of them connects the philosophical questions to the emotional effects of considering those philosophical questions. And another one is like just like elevating the conspiracy that the show is working through. So like it's all like the big elements of the show and they all work really well in that episode in particular. So I would just urge anybody who's like maybe like episode 1 like isn't quite hooking them, I would urge you to try to get to at least 3, because I personally I think that's like the best, a very good representation of how the show works at its best.
Nice. I think I caught up after 3, and so it kind of blend together, all the first 3 for me. But yeah, the anime rule of 3 applies, so you gotta watch the end of 3. Okay. And then I'll also say, once you get into the second half of the season, I think a lot of things start to go off the rails, and it's a lot of amazing moments.
Yeah.
So I would definitely stick around for some of these great moments we're going to talk about here. Okay. That being said, I think it's time to get into spoilers for all of season 1 of Pantheon. So let's give a big spoiler warning here that we're about to talk about. I'm going to initially, the first thing is we're going to talk about the finale because it just came out. So don't listen if you haven't seen all 8 episodes of Pantheon season 1. Also, make sure you watch them in order. I assume they got the order fixed, but be careful about that. But yeah, so please pause it here, go and catch up all of season 1 of Pantheon. Spoilers are starting now. Okay, big finale that we just saw. Michelle, what's standing out to you from the finale?
Oh man. Well, I mean, I guess I should have assumed it would end on an intense cliffhanger. But yeah, like it definitely like that. I mean, I'm curious. I feel like the tone of season 2 is probably going to be very different, just based on how everything was kind of like unfolding mystery. Like, oh, is this person going to be a clone? Maybe. Oh, yeah, they definitely are. Oh, is this person, is the dad going to like degrade it? Like, yeah, that definitely happens. And moving on from that, like there are a lot of plot points that I'm really curious about, but also like you've said, Dylan, like the second half of the season, like it grows in such a scale where we're worried about like international warfare, whereas like the first 4 episodes is just like, ooh, like are Maddie and Caspian ever gonna meet? Like how's that gonna go? Like it's just very different priorities.
That's still my priority.
That was my favorite too.
They got to come back. They got to meet again.
Do you ship them?
Oh, we're talking about this right away. I ship them so much. I love Maddie and Caspian.
Okay, follow-up question. Do you think Caspian's hot? Because, like, oh my God. I'm like, yes. If I was 17, this would be my favorite type of man.
Yeah, I guess so, in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
He's like emo, but also Steve Jobs. Like, what a world.
Right. It's weird that he's like tech founder, but like kind of like hot guy emo. Like, it's interesting combo.
That top hair foosh, like that's what this Steve Jobs character should have done his first time he was alive. He got it right as a clone. It's definitely a
I was like, Steve Jobs came back to life.
Skateboards, he's so cool.
Skateboards.
Yeah.
So like little like not athletic, but like athletic adjacent because he knows.
With the shipping, my reaction, the show kept me so busy. I didn't even consider shipping Maddie and Caspian until they met in episode 6, and it exploded for. I was like, oh my God, this is everything now.
The cool girl with the bleached hair came in. I was like, this can't last forever because Maddie's the main character. And even
how early were you thinking about them before they met?
As soon as they started messaging each other, I was like,
wow.
Yes, Zoomers are gonna crack the code and work together to blow this wide open. It's them against the world of logarithms. I was so in as soon as they started messaging each other online. I was like, please. Let this happen.
Yeah, they met online. It's so good. Okay, yeah. It's definitely happening, by the way. It's definitely happening.
It is. Yeah, they're going through a rough patch right now, but they'll figure it out. It'll be fine.
Yeah, maybe awkward if he's like, hey, meet another version of your dad. I don't know how that's going to land.
I mean, I will say this is one thing I came around to. So at the beginning of the show, I was like, I'm kind of on the mom's side. Like I kind of agree with Ellen initially that like this is not like David, this is not the dad. The human dad died. This is like a UI upload of his consciousness, but to what degree? They claim it's like 100% him, but like how do you prove that? This technology seems very new. And I was like, I don't believe this is a real person. No, like this guy like seems sentimental, but also he's doing some sketchy stuff. Like he bullied all those kids at his daughter's school, which is like kind of a sus thing to do. And he's like trying to talk to the mom a bunch and ruined her date with that perfectly nice man. But by the finale, I was like, yeah, okay, maybe he's like 90% basically her dad, even if he's not the human dad. And I really came around to that as a concept because I was fighting it for a long time. So I do feel like the show convinced me that was real. But yeah, we bring a third dad into the mix in season 2. I feel like he's not going to react well to that. And it could be amazing for relationship drama specifically.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you had that kind of mental arc throughout the season of like navigating. Is that how much of that is her dad? I thought the show didn't approach that as much as I would have liked. Like I think, you make a good point that with the mom, I think that's probably where they get into a lot. But one of the philosophy things is I think like I was kind of expecting them to get into okay, it's a uploaded version of her dad, but that's not her dad. That's like a different person.
Where do we discover
But I don't think the
that
show
was-
ever really got into that too much. Maybe a little bit at the end with the Cody Lori thing.
I disagree a lot on that. I think that they hit it pretty hard in the early episodes of
Really,
the
and they
season.
kind of
Like,
left it alone after that.
well,
maybe I don't remember,
I think at some point they get to a place where like Ellen accepts it, and it's like, oh, okay, like we don't need to like linger on this anymore because we've discussed it enough that she feels comfortable with it going forward. But like I do think like the episodes 2, 3, and like when Cody comes into the midst too, they have like a lot of long conversations. Like there's that scene where they're on the porch talking about this, and like Ellen is like venting to Cody, like it's not human. Like I can't like wrap my head around this. So like I love the fact that they like set aside a lot of time for that conversation, and I think it's one that like as it keeps going, also like the discussions between David and Lori as well about like like what's keeping you alive and like what is like making you conscious, like that's like kind of connected as well. Like is it like love that gives us like that extra thing that makes us human or conscious or whatever? So like I think that's like connected to that whole conversation. So I do think that at least in the first half of the season they give it a lot of attention.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't revisited the first half in a while, so I think that might be why. It feels like they accepted at some point, but I think maybe it's coming back now that we're getting a new version of his dad, and then maybe a new version of Lori if they go in that direction.
Well, yeah, because like later on in the season, Cody has to have that conversation with Laurie, right? Well, I mean, Laurie has it with Cody.
Like the version of me that doesn't love you. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, how do you handle like a reset in personality? Like, is that you're starting over? So now you have to deal with like two different people that existed, even though they're the same person. Like that's like a different question that also could be answered in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, that's another interesting spin on that kind of concept. Yeah. I'll also say right now, I think the whole uploaded intelligence concept is super ridiculous. So that's maybe getting to inside.
Wow.
Because there's just like so much nuance to like different parts of the brain, and how could you make it like a cohesive,
There's no like
full,
artificial intelligence,
conscious
which will never
person.
happen in our lifetime. That's like way more realistic than uploading a person.
Into Dolly and all the weird, like crazy advances we're having there.
Yeah, I mean, we're advancing. I mean, you won't get a sentient artificial intelligence, but that's like at least a concept that makes sense. This whole concept is like completely ridiculous, but the show like is like, okay, this is what's happening.
We're still gonna do it. Yeah,
we're accepting it, and now we're like doing it and dealing with the ramifications. So I love that, and I think it's like the right tone for this stupid concept. Like it's like this show's gonna be super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
would
not to say the
agree.
concept is stupid. It's a little bit more out there than some
It's
other
not
ones.
stupid. It's just ridiculous, and the ridiculous isn't like a negative. It's just a descriptor.
Yeah, I agree.
I
It's
think
not
my
a
thing,
negative.
like the thing I was harping on in terms of like David not being her dad, because I got into this like discussion with myself about like, okay, can he be her dad, but then not like be human? Does he still consider himself human as an uploaded intelligence? Because my thing is like, if you're an uploaded intelligence and you can suddenly start playing 5D chess, like you are interacting with interfaces in a way that is completely not human at all. And I feel like especially like when we were seeing like Chanda, like start to figure out like how he escaped like his workroom eventually. I think that was like episode 3, right? And he starts having to think about the cloud in terms of like the non-physicality of his body and the ways he can manipulate code and data. Like I feel like my perspective was that if they can do that, they are a little more removed from the human experience, and that is like a price that is paid for transversing like the laws of physicality. Like maybe you do kind of lose aspects of yourself, and maybe you become a very different type of, if we want to consider them people, like you're a very different type of person. And like, what does that mean in terms of their humanity? do they have like morals? I mean, kind of, but also those morals seem to like disintegrate depending on the person over time. And like, what does that mean, right? So like, on a level, I'm like, yeah, David's her dad. He has a lot of sentimental human characteristics of her dad, but also maybe he's not quite her dad. He's not human anymore, and that's okay. But that means like the UI dad is going to be a very different dad who can do very different things that human dad never could, and that's a different dad. It's a different dad.
Different dad. Yeah, there's that thought of, is it the same person, and then there's the thought of, is it a person at all, and how the show, you're getting into like how the show deals with the uploaded intelligence integrating with the cloud and everything, all the technology and online. That's like a major part of the show, and I think seeing how they visually represent that throughout the season is a big highlight and a big kind of purpose of the show.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, because that is a big part of the books as well. I'll at some point reference the short stories, but it's like seeing this. It's not just that it's a person who gets uploaded and they're sitting on one server. It's like a person gets uploaded and they can interact with the entire technology of the world. That's kind of the concept, yeah. And then the concept of like, because they can do that, they're gods, and that's kind of the premise of the books, which I think the show at varying points kind of hits on here. I guess the name Pantheon. We can talk about that. Okay, Alex, wherever you want to take this. A few further comments. We were kind of talking about the UIs as a concept topic, or if you want to get back to the finale.
Well, no, I think that the most interesting part of the show is honestly the questions it raises of like trying to figure out how you view these characters. So I'm more interested in that conversation. I think something that Michelle brought up with the idea of like morality, I think that that's also something that comes into, and Dylan, you described like they talk about themselves as gods at various points. And especially David and Lori talk about like we shouldn't have this power, like we're like
right. It's too much.
Whereas Chanda's like full go, like we got to take advantage of this power. And so you also like get into a little bit of like power corrupts absolutely, and like the more power that you have, the more easy it is to slip into taking actions that you without fully considering the consequences of who you're affecting. So when you see like Chanda take these like extreme actions that like on their face, it's like, why are you doing this? Like this is like just like purely sowing chaos. But it's like, yeah, this person who we see like a little bit of his backstory, like he was always an angry person, all very alone. So it's like all of a sudden he's given this power, and like that's what he decides to do with it. But it's because of like giving this power to someone who does not have the background to prepare him for something like that allows that to happen, and does mess with the entire world. So I also appreciate like seeing that happen in different ways, because also like you have David, right, who's like really anchored to his love for Maddie specifically, and like once that his final action, right, is based on he just had no longer was able to stay alive, so and he trusted Maddie to at that point to do move forward, but like that was what was keeping him anchored for so long, and also what makes Caspian feel somewhat okay with like handing the keys over to David, because otherwise, like, I mean, Lori also with her power was kind of like getting erratic too. So I like that factor as well, like seeing how like this added power that's a superhuman affects these people in a couple of in varying factors.
Yeah, I agree. That's super interesting, and seeing as these like former humans with these godlike powers, what are their what type of actions will they take? I think that was really interesting. The background of the characters they presented, I'll get into that as some of the highlights. I think that's some of the best parts of the show. I will say one of my first criticisms, I think the actions of the three UIs in the last 3 episodes specifically, I didn't really understand why they were doing anything. I think the show kind of tries to explain it. And including in the finale, I felt like, and I think maybe part of it is supposed to be opaque because they are these like maybe above human morals to a certain extent, and maybe that's what they're going for. But I had a little bit of a hard time following the differences in opinion of should we let the world know? Should we send out these plans? David, at the end, in the finale, in an incredible moment, does decide to send out the message, seemingly for more sentimental reasons than logical reasons, but at least that's how the finale presents it.
And it's like unclear to know if like that, you see him do that, you see the aftermath of it, and it's like, well, did this like actually help anything? And then even like when Caspian's like, all right, yeah, this will be the end of everything. You see everyone rioting, it's definitely going to end.
And it's interesting because we're not even sure if this is correct.
Yeah, and it's like, well, no, now everyone's just going to do it in secret and claim that they got rid of stuff, but there's no stopping this. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, I think that was a really good point. Yeah, like there's no, it's up to the ante of what could have taken maybe several more decades, but now it's happening. What do? You can't stop it. How do you control it? Yeah, I think like control is the thing they're trying to mitigate, right? It's just like, how do we make the best out of this in a way that benefits us personally? But there's no way to stop it. And the idea that like, and I love this. This is why it gets so like rabbit holey. If everyone has a backup, that means like Chanda has a backup. And like the Steve Jobs character has a backup, and like everyone has a backup. And I mean, that's really stressful, but really exciting. But it also seems like, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with either of them that one, people needed to know, like, because I was trying to remember Chanda's point. So he's like, oh yeah, I told like 6 like countries that I have determined can handle this information in a way that is still ultimately for the good of humanity, and that's fine. And then Lori was like, no, that's crazy. Now like all these people know it's going to be an arms race in terms of who can get more UIs online faster. This is terrible. I have to warn everyone in the world, which also seems like a really bad idea. And then they fight about it, and then Lori dies, and then David is like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna send her a message out. And I'm still like, was that a good idea? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if anyone really won there. It's just escalation after escalation.
Very confusing, and I think Chanda's initial plan is also kind of hard to follow, which ended up being, we're going to send it to the intelligence agencies. He wants it to be a secret. I think ultimately Chanda wants...
How is it going to be a secret? You tell like 6 different countries.
So yeah, his point was it would balance out. I think it's a sketchy reasoning, but he wanted it to be a secret. Yeah. Lori wants to tell everyone. Chanda, I think, if I'm remembering, Chanda ultimately wants everyone to be uploaded because he was designing the virtual world. Yeah. So that's kind of...
He was like lonely, like Alex said. Like I do think his backstory is really important. It's like, well, if we can all be free from like the drudges of normal society and how that makes us sad, lonely people, we can like be born again. I get that. And also, like Alex said, it's like, yeah, if you have that amount of power, why wouldn't you want to do something kind of personal and kind of stupid when you have the resources to make that happen? I totally get it. I do think one of the things I appreciate about Pantheon is that it's like, yeah, you want to see what kind of asinine decisions human beings would make if they were uploaded to the cloud. This is what they do. It might seem like a bad idea, but it is like a very like human thing to do.
Yeah,
and I think that's decisions in the moment.
To speak a little toward in favor of Lori's plan here, I do think that there's also this element, right, of Chanda wants to keep it in the hands of the intelligence agencies and the military, and throughout history, people get angry and annoyed if they find out that the government has been hiding things from them. So I do think that Lori is following precedent here in history of like, no, we can't let things that this important be secret. Like this is like something that the public has a right to know is happening with their tax dollars or with their government or whatever. But like they need to know that it's happening because this is so powerful. Imagine what things they could do unchecked, right? Like it's the idea like public pressure would do something. Now in both cases, in Lori's case and in Chanda's case, there's a bit of naivete naivete going on, right? It's like you're looking at the ideal ways that both of these things could work out without considering that humanity does not always work well as a group. Like you don't always like gel together to do the correct thing. Like there's always differences in the ways that we split up into different factions, and thus stuff does not get done as quickly or as obviously as they should be. So I think that also speaks to the disconnect that may happen when you get uploaded, right? You're looking at it from the code perspective, and you've kind of lost the human perspective of how people react to these things.
Yeah, and I think that the finale, I agree that that's something the show is really interested in. The finale shows a lot of protests and stuff like that, and in reaction, that was a big thing there. Yeah, I think all that's really interesting. I guess Lori ultimately doesn't want people uploaded. Don't even remember if that's true or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. Did she agree when it happened to her?
No, she was unconscious. She got knocked out in the car accident. So like it doesn't seem like she had much of a choice. She was taken to continue her work as an accountant, which I don't know anybody willingly would do.
Yeah, who would want that to just be their job? And like David, like he was more aware of what the UI process was. But
I think Cody consented to it, but they lied to them after. It's also interesting. In the first short story, they don't even. There's no consenting. They do this and they don't even tell you.
Wow.
So it's interesting. The show kind of made it a little bit less evil in a way. Anyway, back to the finale. We can come back to all these things quickly on the finale. I thought the finale was really good. To me, the highlight is the fight scene between the UIs with David and Chanda, which I thought was some of the best animation I've seen in a while. So creative, so interesting, and like I said, I think the show visually exploring how the UIs interact in the cloud is
grow extra arms, have 7 sword knives, do whatever you.
I thought there was a lot of like geometric animation, like breakdowns of backgrounds and scenes and stuff. I thought it was really incredible. And by the way, in the second, I'll introduce now. So after the finale, I read the first 2 short stories that this is based on. The show. It's 3. I didn't read the third one. Because I think it's what season 2 is, but basically the first short story is the first episode, and it's a pretty straight adaptation, the first episode with the emojis and stuff, of the Maddie stuff. And then the second short story is, interestingly, like the finale is an adaptation of that in a way, but it's very different. Because the show's gone in like such a different direction. I mean, not like in a different direction, but it's doing its own thing to like such an extent. It's really interesting to like read the second short story and see like, okay, I see how they took these elements and did it in like a completely different way. But at one point, Maddie is like, there's an epic fight happening in the servers right now, and I can't see it, and like no one could even see it, but it's like the biggest fight in history, and that's in the story. And then the show gets to visualize that, like in the finale. That's like that's really cool. There's also an incredible scene with, I guess, when David is dying, when he's like the big white thing, and Maddie's there.
I really liked that.
To me, that was the most striking image of the finale.
Yeah, that was really incredible imagery as well. I was a little confused what was happening, but he's dying from the flaw, dying from Chanda.
I think the combination
energy of uploading the message, because
dying from the message. Yeah, so this is him disintegrating from like running out of fuel, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm. And before that, the reason that he's so drained at that point is that he's been beaten down by Chanda and the other UIs, and like the animation of him like decaying and breaking down. And it's, before this, you've been seeing that with Lori through over the course of the season as well. Like I think it highlights the usage of animation, that you can like sprinkle in stuff like that all the time to like give you a status of where they're at right now.
I think Pantheon had to be animated, which I think is awesome. Like I think this is the type of show, and this shows why we should have more adult animated shows, because you can't do a Pantheon in live action where so much takes place in the cloud. I mean, you could, but it would be mostly CGI, which would be animation anyway, right?
I think it's more like there's so much live action sci-fi that like relies on CGI and whatnot, but like I think that you're limiting yourself sometimes with that. Like animation has gives you a lot more freedom to think of like what things would look like 100 or 1,000 years from now, and you can really play around with that stuff. So it's nice to see that something like Pantheon get to play in that in a serious way.
Yeah.
Plus, I think the issue with having a live action show that relies really heavily in CGI is like you still have physical actors who are like in a green screen room with nothing they can really touch or feel or interact with, right? Mm-hmm. Where if it's all animated, everything suddenly, like there's no weird uncanny valley there anymore. You can interact with anything in all of the ways all the time, stylize everything, and it meshes a lot easier. So either bring back really exciting live action sets, which nobody wants to do because it's expensive, or just have more freedom in animation. So I feel like the saddest thing is when you can feel like everything's CGI but the human characters, and it's like, well, I don't see any of this, and they're walking around it all weird because it's not really there.
Yeah, I just seeing the visual representation of the cloud in the game. I guess it's the virtual world sometimes, and sometimes it's the Reign of Winter, like World of Warcraft type game. And I'm a little unclear what was what in the finale. Maybe they blended together.
I think they blended together because like the weapons definitely felt very Reign of Winter.
And Maddie goes in there in her Reign of Winter character at some point.
Yeah, and like Chanda even has like, I mean, he has his own special boy outfit on, but it feels more like role playing.
I believe what's happening there is that Chanda went to these Chinese UIs because the Chinese UIs have to be in the game, and he wants them there to protect him while he's doing his business. So I believe all of that is happening in the Reign of Winter situation.
Yeah, so at least they start in the game and the foundation. Yeah, maybe they break the game or something, but yeah, it's based in the game. I agree, and they had to go to that setup because they like kind of had to visually base it in something real. I think probably they're animated separate studios or something. By the way, the game and the main show, I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see in season 2 if like I assume they will have to go outside of the realm of the game if you're going to continue to have these sorts of like virtual fights and shenanigans going on, and probably a lot more abstract type animation if you don't have that foundation. But that was just really fascinating to see the visual choices they made in that realm. In the finale and early, I think in 7, there's another fight scene like that. So I love that choice from the show of basing things in the RPG game, which is just one scene in the beginning of the second short story, and they kind of extrapolate that in the show into a lot more. So I think that's really cool. The finale. The ending of the finale. The mood of the ending, I think, was incredible. I think I loved Caspian. The reveal that Caspian gets to choose the one UI to give integrity to. I think I really liked that. I like him choosing David. I like him bringing back. All that felt really epic and a really kind of somber mood. And then what's going on Maddie's side as I guess like the beginning of the apocalypse. And how they said all of that and ending there and with the music. I thought that all came together incredibly well.
I agree. I do think it speaks a lot of Caspian to immediately be like, oh, I want to give this ultimate power to David. Just it speaks to how few people he knows in his life, because David is not a perfect choice. Like David is the best of 3 kind of not great options.
Michelle, my first thought when it's like Caspian gets to choose,
I was like, not David, Caspian. You don't know anyone else, so I know why you chose David.
I mean, it's a good pick from what we know.
David's petty too. In the first 2 episodes, he's still petty. He's not infallible. But Caspian only knows 5 people, so I get it. It's just very funny to me.
My first thought when it was Caspian gets to choose, okay, Caspian, he's gonna kill Maddie and then make her the wouldn't Maddie be the perfect UI?
Why did this take such a turn? Oh no!
That's the season 2 finale. Don't leak that.
Oh god!
Will Maddie be a UI? That's on the table, right? Like everyone could be uploaded.
Can you be a UI and not die? Because I start to wonder that by the end.
Not that we've seen.
You have to die. Yeah.
You would have to develop a different way of doing it, because the only way we've seen is like literally
poking the brain a lot,
killing your brain layer by layer.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's coming back from that specifically.
Yeah, and we see the American astronaut in the beginning of the finale. She has to die to get uploaded. Kind of a weird choice to introduce that character. I assume she'll be a bigger part of season 2.
I'm hoping
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
She was very cool.
She had such a presence. Like no one's gonna tell her what to do. I liked it.
She's just like, yeah, I'll get uploaded. Like, okay, she volunteers.
Yeah,
That's the one
She's
person
like,
that
I
volunteers.
want to be special. Will this make me special? Okay, let's go.
That was another example. I think the show does really nail the backstory's kind of emotional build up to the UIs. Like we get to see her failing the mission and then choosing to go there. Okay, getting into favorite parts of Pantheon, favorite scenes. I think we've been talking about it already. Since I'm on that topic, I'll bring up one thing we haven't gotten to yet. I think in episode 4, the Cody and Lori backstory. Is emotional backstory set to When in Rome. There's their song. That's one of my favorite parts of the show. I was loving that.
That's
yeah,
the nice part. It's not one of my favorites.
We'll talk about Cody and Lori as well. Also, in episode 4, the ending of 4 with Hannah is revealed to be in on the conspiracy.
All of the live stuff with the parents and with Hannah was so fun. I wish that could have been in the whole show because, like, oh my gosh, like every thing falling apart in front of Caspian's face was the best. His whole world being alive. It's the perfect thing for a moody teen boy to worry about. It's perfect age.
This will be our next big topic. The Caspian reveal in episode 5. We'll get back to that. That was one of my highlights.
That was a highlight.
I said Maddie and Caspian meeting in 6. The ending of 7, Lori's message and her dying. I thought that was really incredible too. Other big highlights you want to talk about now, and we'll get to the more specific stuff.
Chanda's death.
I was gonna say for a lot of people early on, I think that's like the scene, like, whoa, okay.
Okay, the show's not afraid. All right, it's happening. Oh no, what else could happen? I mean, it was horrifying, but man, it left an impression.
Yeah.
This is a stupid detail, but I do just want to say his final word was purple. I mean something.
Purple. You're right. Oh god, seeing him in episode 3, just how the days never ended, and he didn't know it wasn't registering for him. I was just like, man, capitalism is like this though. Mm-hmm. It's just every day being in a room with a computer, clacking away, making money.
Yeah, relating to that, in terms of favorite parts or elements of Pantheon, I think that the way they depict your initial intro to the virtual world is just very good, and all the Chanda's monotony, and also the way that gradually over time those older uploads break into his thing, it has horror elements to it of sneaking around through holes, and obviously their design is very zombie-like, and also the idea that you initially start kind of flat because that's all you see yourself as is just code, and you don't really become 3D until you've expanded your mind to understand that you're code. You see that especially with David in his initial fight with Lori, and you see him extend himself from the flatness to the 3D. You can see the process happening. I just thought oh, that was just really cool imagery of how living in the virtual world works.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I remember later on there's also one scene David's here's my source code for spelling, and he pulls that up. I love all that stuff too. But yeah, I agree, the starting intro to the world, all the early Chanda stuff, really interesting, and we'll talk more about his character. Michelle, any other highlights?
Oh man, I loved any time Caspian's fake parents would be like, all right, we gotta do this really important event today for reasons that haven't been made clear to the audience yet, but that stuff, honestly, I just kind of trying to theorize about okay, this kid's important, these aren't his real parents, why does any of this matter? He is really smart, what does this mean? Because I think it was around maybe episode 3 when I was like, what if we have seen that Steve Jobs guy reference, and he was in a flashback, and this kid's really smart, could this be his clone?
Yeah, let's talk about Caspian
later. Was so great. Oh, it was the best.
Yeah,
Caspian is so fun.
Okay. Caspian, by the way, an original character to the show, not even in the
Oh,
books,
what?
That's pretty
best
incredible.
character is original. Oh my god. Because like I'll say this, like Maddie is also like the main character, but like I feel bad for saying this. She gets more interesting later, but for like a lot of the early stuff, she's just like a person that things happen to that are interesting, but she's not very interesting. But Caspian is very interesting from the start.
I agree with that. We'll come back to that. Caspian, I think he's probably the best character, right, in the show. Especially the 5 episodes.
He's definitely one of the easiest to root for, I would say. Up until the finale, because then he assumes the duties of his OG daddy, you know?
OG daddy?
The Steve Jobs is like him, but it's not him. But it's like his OG daddy, because he's a clone. So
I think it's more of an OG self.
OG self? I feel like Caspian's his own person, though. I feel like... But then again,
I guess they describe the process.
Yay.
Well, I mean, a clone can't be that. You can never. This is the thing that I thought was like the funniest thing about them deciding to make a clone. It's like you cannot replicate someone's upbringing because like social norms have changed in like 50 years. Like environments change. The slightest thing could affect like everything. So just like having the same traumatic events broadly applied to a separate clone is never going to make them exactly what you want. All you've made is just a really smart clone who's going to do whatever they want with their smart brain. So I am curious to see like how he might be making decisions differently, even if he does assume the position, because he can never 100% be Steve Jobs. He just can't. I'm sorry. I'm never going to say the real... What?
Stephen Holstrom.
Stephen Holstrom. I'm
name.
just gonna say Steve Jobs. It's Steve Jobs. We don't know it's Steve Jobs. He's never gonna be Steve Jobs, and I love that. And I hope they get into that more in season 2 because like there's too much nuance to that to unpack with cloning. You can't replicate the environment unless it was a simulated environment, online. Then maybe you could do everything right. But no, not a chance. In real time. In 2022, teenage 17-year-old, it's not going to be the same as when Steve Jobs was a kid. You just can't. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah. By the way, Steve Jobs was not a genius like this, by the way. But
I know, this is a
the tech founder,
kind of,
the analog.
He's old, wrinkly. He's got glasses. He wears.
And he might have worn a black turtleneck in the show. Yeah.
I totally agree that all the explanation of like we're trying to replicate him through these like inflection points, that was like all such crap. Like I completely disagree that this, but yeah, it's so fun. It was they
never work, but let's try anyway. Okay.
And it's like the show isn't saying that because clearly Caspian's a different person, so it's not even that the show's saying it's true, but they kind of seem to endorse that they could replicate the intelligence, which I also think is crap, like that you can replicate the intelligence development that way.
I love it.
But that's the thing. It's like I completely disagree with this, but the show goes in on it so hard. It's so fun. Fun. It just really commits to these out there things like this, and it really look at. But Michelle, you love Caspian. You seem like
Caspian.
Or do you love the mystery surrounding him?
I mean, my favorite Caspian was a combination of him like slowly hacking his way to the truth. Him making friends with somebody who's also going through their experience dealing with UI, which is Maddie, and also just like his parents are a sham. What the heck is that? What does this mean for him? And then the reality like destroying his life, like all that's just really fun. And he's like not that morally new. Like he's selfish, but like he's not like, I don't know, on a level of like him to like Chanda, I feel like he's only like a certain amount of selfish. Like I do love when Maddie pushes back against him in the last couple episodes when he's like, all right, you gotta be my failsafe. If you don't hear from me for a week, you gotta do this stuff. And she's like, I'm not gonna do this stuff for you. Like, screw you. I wanted you to save my dad, and now he's dead, so you can fuck off. Like, that was the most I ever liked Maddie, that and when she tried to save her dad from dying at the end. But, because that's the most active she was. But, like, even that version of Caspian's, like, he's still, like, just trying to do his best. And he's very easy to root for. So I think that's part of why I enjoyed him.
Alex, what do you think of Caspian in the show?
I definitely like him. I think I agree that he's the most interesting of the main characters. Although
Yeah.
I'll stand up a little for Maddie when we get to her. But yeah, Caspian's got a lot going on. In addition to what you've already talked about with the mystery escalating over time, I think that also when he gets to existential crisis mode, I really like him. Like I like it, just like. Yeah, like everything just like falling apart in front of his eyes, and like he doesn't know what to do with it. It's like very
Gotta help
reminiscent
out.
of Jim Carrey in the Truman Show, right? It's just like, what do
Oh,
you do
yeah,
when
yeah.
you figure out that your entire life has been
Wow.
orchestrated? Like, how do you handle that, or what do you do after?
Alex,
Like,
that was my reaction at the end of episode 4 when the girlfriend is revealed to me. I was like, oh my god, he's getting Truman showed. Like
Yeah.
this is like, it's like such. I thought that whole arc is such a parallel to everything in the Truman Show.
And like he you know, well, he does what any confused teen does, goes to a church to figure out his
guess.
life, you know, and helps other troubled teens with math. Classic arc. But but I think that Caspian is really fun. It does feel a little I don't want to say it's not satisfying, but it does feel a little off that like at the end you see him like kind of just accept that he is taking over in the Holstrom mode of like, you know, oh, I will find the cure to the flaw. Like he's like fine. After all that, like he is at where the company wanted him to end up. So like that feels like a little strange given like all the pushback up to that point, but it does make sense in the story that he ends up there. But so I'm interested to see what he does in season 2. As we've talked about, like he is his own person. He can
I think he's gonna
he's shown-
complicate the heck out of it. In
Yeah,
season 2.
he's shown that he can make decisions that people aren't expecting from him. So like that bodes well for what you can do story wise with him. But yeah, Caspian's real fun, and I think that in that, especially in that first half of the season, like his storyline of like the conspiracy continuing to mount is like such a great hook to like keep you and so then when like it finally like melds with the overall story, it's like it's still great, but like that part of like figuring out what's going on is so good to at early on to keep you invested.
Whereas like Maddie's situation with David is like, oh, my dad, is he my dad still? I don't know. Like that's really all she's kind of dealing with.
Maddie's side is a lot more philosophical to start with, which I also like, but like it's definitely a different flavor to the mystery that Caspian's going on for.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. But I enjoyed the Caspian in the last few episodes. The plot, to me, one of my big criticisms, episode 7. I feel like it was very sudden that they decide to turn the company over to him. That they like go from controlling him to giving him the wheels. I thought that was incredibly sudden. And then him like agreeing. I agree. Although once we get to the finale, I think his actions are fine. He's like, I'm dissolving the company. He like accepts the power, but rejects the direction they want him to go in. I think it ultimately works out.
Them turning the company over to him makes sense just because, you know, everything stopped going according to plan at once, right? Like he finds out the truth, his fake dad blows everything up. If he doesn't take control of the company, like that's what they were literally waiting for the whole time.
Well, like, yeah, that was the plan,
right?
but it's like a week ago they were trying to control him, right? Like why have they
realized it wasn't gonna work. They only had so many options.
So this is their backup, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, that's their backup plan, but it's like it's a plan.
And I'd say the overall environment of the show like turns a lot more chaotic in the second half because of like how fast the UIs are doing their actions. So like it makes sense that like in that chaotic atmosphere, it's like we got to do something desperate, right? And like that is desperation incarnate, going to the plan that you were preparing for decades. Like no, we got to deploy it now. It's too late. Otherwise things are gonna go. So. So like I think that like in a vacuum it's probably like a little sudden, but within the momentum of the show it made sense. Exactly. Because it's just like we don't know what else to do. Like stuff is happening so fast.
I do think the show probably moves too fast.
I think it wants to go too fast, and I like that.
I think it's like
given what they decide to do, I think that they need to move fast.
I feel like 4 to 5 episodes, like the first 4 to 5 had like perfect pacing, and then after that it was like, all right, we got like 3 episodes left, everybody. We gotta You got a rapid speed. I would
It
agree.
did-
I feel like the last few feel a lot faster with a lot more moving pieces than the first handful for sure.
And I think you could say it starts with 5 when we were getting back to this topic, when we
start
reveal
with
that
4.
Caspian is the clone, and I was shocked that we did it so early.
Yeah.
So here's my reaction to the here's my arc with the Caspian plotline. I was
Okay.
like, okay, so I think I caught up after 3. I was like, okay, he's a clone of Holstrom. So
Right,
so I was,
right. It's pretty it's like
like they kind of spell it out early on.
Yeah, they really do.
I think they don't say it, but they juxtapose like a lot of stuff involving the original founder who's dead. They like really hammer that, and then they like have it being a setup with Logram. So it's like he's a clone, but I didn't know exactly how he was a clone, right? Like in fact, he's a Grimwalker of Stephen Holstrom.
That's cute, baby.
I thought that they were I thought that they like froze Holstrom's brain and they were going to upload him to the clone. I thought that's where I thought we were going.
I think they just got some of his DNA, maybe.
I think the way they went is kind of more interesting because they're trying to like replicate it. It's like even more wild in some ways. They're not trying to like literally insert him in. They're trying to replicate the person through like social conditioning. Like I didn't see that coming either, that aspect, you know. So I thought it would relate to the upload concept, but I think it's interesting that it kind of is a little separate. It's more like, oh, we can't do the upload because of the flaw, and he never solved it, so this is now what we have to do.
Okay, this is confusing though, because like at the end of the finale, didn't Pope basically say like, oh well, everyone has like UI cancer, right? Everyone decays except this one, and we have to entrust this with somebody. Why didn't they just entrust it with Steve Jobs and when they uploaded him the first time?
So then he never solved it. He never cracked integrity yet.
Oh, he didn't crack it? Oh, I thought they were just saving it.
I think what he was going for in that conversation is that once they find the cure to the flaw, only one will get the cure, so they can have control over all the other UIs.
So that was new information that was his plan. So it's like one. Holstrom never solved the flaw, and he died right before. And then they like preserved his workstation, here's what he was working on right as he died. He was about to solve it, and so then it seems like Caspian's basically there. It seems like he's right about to do it. If not, he did it already. But he never solved it, and because I think if he solved it, they would have uploaded him. That's what they're saying. Like he would have uploaded himself, but instead they're doing this in the hopes that the new one will solve it. And then that was new information in the finale that they only intend to give integrity to. By the way, they use a lot of generic terms.
That's a hot mess. There's no way they can only give it to one person. And then what are you going to do with infinite
right, like
UIs
what does that mean?
die?
It's like it's kind of it's firsthand it's like, okay, this is kind of a great plan to have someone who can control this chaos, but then you think, oh, you're condemning all these UIs to death. It's kind of terrible.
Not even that. It's just like, were they able to control literally anything else from spiraling out of control at this point? No. So will they be able to control that and only have one person never die? No, of course it's going to happen to more people. There's no way to contain this stuff. It's like they keep making these decisions and it's like, it'll be fine. I thought it through. So it's of course it's going to work. And I love that this keeps happening because it's the most chaos options all the time. And I feel like there's no way that power is only going to be in one person's hands, one UI's hands. No way.
And it's also a continuation of the discussion of godhood, right? Like you're giving godhood to one person. How do you expect this one person to like do the ideal thing with it if humanity has shown you up to this point that does not happen most of the time?
Yeah, I can't imagine it'll go to Steven's plan.
One thing I was thinking pretty early on in the show, because I've had like film archive classes in college, and one of the things that's like really interesting about like film and media preservation is just like the different ways you can preserve something, right? Like you can put like actual film in like a pressure and temperature controlled vault and keep it pretty well preserved for like maybe 85, 100 years, or you can put it on a DVD under the right circumstances. It could last maybe almost as long. You could put it on a hard drive, but all these things are inherently organic material, which will break down over time. So the idea, the very crux of logarithms being like, if we upload people to a server, they'll live forever, is inherently flawed because those hard drives will not be there forever. Like the things that they need to inhabit just on like a visceral level will break down and decompose over time. We have not escaped that in any way, shape, or form. The cloud survives on physical hard drives and other types of media to exist. So you can't live forever. It's not possible. So logarithms, why are you so like, do you just mean you want to live for like maybe 150 years in some kind of alternate reality? Because that's feasible. But forever is not in the cards. That's not possible. It's literally not possible.
Yeah, and I think it's a particularly relevant thought to the show because the show there's a lot of server talk in the show. The show really leans into like this UI is housed in this server. Like how they kill Lori at the end is he blows up the server. Interestingly, the book doesn't. The stories don't really do that. Like Chanda kills Lori not through like that method. Like he kills her like on the server, like just as virtual fighting. So like the show like chose to lean into this like physical bounding of UIs particularly, which I do agree does invoke questions of
more sense that because like it's like you are still kind of helpless to wherever your server exists, and if that gets nuked, you are gonzo for real.
Yeah, it's more of a tangible thing, whereas like in the story, they're kind of spread out on many servers, which doesn't seem to be the case as much in the show. But yeah, you would need people to maintain it, I guess. But yeah, the like let's upload everyone. Probably not a good plan. I agree. You probably need some humans.
Be the mod on the outside watching all the hard drives.
You could have like the sacred chosen human line who maintains all the servers, and then when they're about to die, they get uploaded, but they have kids, and then so they just like keep maintaining
This system also seems prime for class discrimination. Yeah! You know, the rich people get to be uploaded, the poor people have to stay maintaining. You know,
about the class inequality because that's a whole other thing. Like. The scary blobby boys, right? They talk about how they were like really poor people that were kind of snatched up and experimented on in the very early stages of trying to crack UI uploads. So like it seems to be a kind of like they're not saying the quiet part out loud that like the only people they actually want to experience the full effects of like the best form of being a UI are a select few that are very high up the food chain. But I think for a lot of like the government folks, at least, or logarithms, like they don't intend for this to be something every single person can feasibly have access to.
Yeah, so maybe that's a reason to spread the message like Lori wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think they could do more on the class inequity, more of the capitalism satirization.
What different people would want that experience versus others? Like, what would it give them that they don't have in the real world? I mean, that could be. I do like the idea that like some people would want to be uploaded versus others, it being against their will, and that complicating their relationship to existing in the cloud.
I don't know if this was meant to be funny, but that moment in the protests where just like one guy stands up, I want to be uploaded. Like,
I think that was supposed to be funny.
That's the time, buddy.
I think, by the way, random thought, I think the show has a lot of tonal juxtaposition shifts and stuff, and it doesn't always necessarily nail them. But yeah, there's a lot of lighter moment, dark moment, fun moment. Yeah, I think it shifts a lot. Let's talk more about Maddie. We can come back to Maddie. By the way, Caspian stuff was great. Was it too early? I mean, the show moves so fast. I think you got to do it at some point.
I think it made. I think we needed to go there to get through all the stuff that happens in the last 3 episodes.
It is very funny that they reveal the show does its clone reveal in episode 5. Miraculous Ladybug going into season 5 has not done its clone reveal yet.
Wait, there's a clone in Miraculous.
Yep.
I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Michelle.
Yep. They haven't explicitly told us yet. Okay. Who is the clone? It's kind of similar to the Caspian. It's like kind of Caspian-esque character. Maddie, as a main character, I mean, okay, I'll start off. I love Maddie. Maddie reminds me so much of Shizuku from Whisper of the Heart. I'll say.
Shizuku does so much. on her own.
Not in terms of use of the character. We can start with just like the character. So I
Okay.
think Maddie's
Oh,
very emotive. I think she's a
yeah.
broody side. I think she
Yeah.
is. I think the show kind of ends up using them in somewhat similar ways. I love Maddie. I'll say. Well, let me give the criticism first. I think one of the biggest flaws with the season is the show very quickly loses Maddie as a main character for me. Like
Yeah.
basically like after episode 1 or something. I do think she comes back in the end, but she becomes like the fourth or fifth most important character pretty quickly in the show. I was not really sold watching most of the season that Maddie was the main character. So for context, I read the first 2 short stories. Maddie is the main character. There is no Caspian. It's very centered on Maddie and David and their family. And so it's like that's the core of the story they're adapting, and they basically add everywhere else. Like they add all these other elements. Like Chanda and Laura are there, but they give so much more material to them. They give these new characters, logarithms. There's only Dr. Waxman, like they add all these other logarithms, like employees, like including Pope, like I don't think he's even in the books. So I would say potentially by adding so much and fleshing out the short stories so much, they lose Maddie in the process a little bit. I mean, she is more fleshed out because the stories are very short, but I would say she does a lot at the end, and so I hope that season 2 keeps that going with Maddie. Alex, your Maddie thoughts though?
Yeah, I would agree that Maddie gets less focus over the course of the season, but I think that fits with the general direction the season goes, where like it starts off as this very like one situation, like a very small insulated thing, and as the season goes on, you get the implications are growing. There's more UIs. Oh, this is going to become a worldwide thing. Oh, there's like war going on. So like as the stakes get higher, the shift of the season kind of has to go to like larger stuff with like Caspian logarithms. So Maddie like gets left behind, but I think that it works for the first half of the season that you get this focus on Maddie as like a grounding of like, okay, like this is like one specific instance, and like it gives us time to look at a little more of the philosophical and emotional impact that this would have. So by the time we get to Caspian stuff, you focus a little more on like the more tangible effects that this will have on the world, but because we spent time initially like getting our heads wrapped around the concept in the first place of UI. So like and I think also like Maddie on her own doesn't have a lot going on, but I think that the family unit, like Maddie's relationship with David, Maddie's relationship with her mom Ellen, those like I do think that they get a lot of material out of that, a lot of like back and forth conversation about like what's going on, how to handle it, how Maddie views the return of his dad versus how Ellen views it, and like seeing the tension that causes between them. And I think also like the initial mystery of like Maddie figuring out what the emoji stuff is and all that is very compelling. So like I like Maddie. I like Maddie a lot in those first episodes, and I think that it makes she's used the family as a unit is used pretty effectively. And I think just by the nature of the show, where like it's shifting focus over time, it does kind of have to move over to the other characters. But she and Ellen and David served their purpose really well in the first half.
Right. I think the show makes a decision to go big and expand towards which is like kind of the point of the story, expand towards this technology apocalypse. But it like wants to detail that every step of the way and like show all these big concepts. And it's hard I think they struggled to do that and maintain Maddie's perspective in the middle of the season. Is kind of how I describe it. But I mean, I think it's like they end up doing a good enough job. But yeah, it's like having read the story, which like keeps the Maddie perspective. It's like there's just a consequence of kind of what they're trying to do, and I wonder maybe we should have shifted the perspective away from Maddie. Should she have been the main character? I hate saying that because I love her so much, but it's a little awkward, I think, for the show to try to pull it off. And like if season 2 goes bigger, how do you keep doing this? Well, maybe one way is to make David the UI lord. Then that keeps Maddie involved.
I think also Maddie's still important in giving you like the on the ground impact of everything that's going on. Like even Maddie in those final episodes, like her main thing is like trying to keep David alive. That you also like getting from her eyes like the apocalyptic worldview that everyone's dealing with. Like she's doing the shopping in the market, and, like seeing people. She's like stocking up for stuff. So like I think that if you use her a little more like that, she can still be a very important piece and like making sure that we don't get too lost in like the virtual world. Like we keep seeing like what's happening on like in Sacramento, like what's the effects of all of this. Maddie can still do stuff there.
Yeah. I will say, to me, on this topic, one of the highlights, like I said, was in episode 6 when Maddie and Caspian come together. And I think, like, to me, that's when Maddie starts to come back. Like, once episode 6 for me really culminated, like, Maddie, Caspian get together, and then Chanda also meets up with the main cast. Like, when everyone got together in 6, I thought that was really big for the show. Like, I thought that really really got us going in the right direction. So I think like maybe in terms of season 2, like getting Maddie and Caspian together for most of the season, I think that's a potential solution here because Caspian's involved in big ways. I agree Maddie as the like on boots on the ground for the apocalypse, which is her role in the story. I think that's a great perspective as well as things escalate. But I mean, obviously since I ship them, but I would be a proponent of getting joining Maddie and Caspian pretty quickly into season 2 and having most of the season like that.
I feel like my thing with Maddie, like now that I've thought about it a little more, it's just that like sometimes she does things, but a lot of times when she does do things, it's more of that like she helps flesh out people around her who are very interesting. So like her relationship to her dad is very interesting because you think about like, oh, is he like the state of his humanity and like he's doing all this for the love of his child, and he has like a lot of things to do in the narrative of the story. Like her mom, I love her mom's character. I think Ellen is so interesting, and I like agree a lot of like how she feels initially, and her coming around and like getting the other logarithms guy involved, and like she has a lot going on. Like Maddie's relationship to Caspian is really interesting because Caspian becomes so important in the story. But like I feel like Maddie, like part of the thing that makes me say like she's not that interesting is just because like she seems more of like a vehicle to help other characters do things, and her juxtaposition to them makes their characters more interesting and more involved in the story. And besides being like a boots on the ground, like human perspective person of just like the general broadness of the apocalypse coming, like her outside of any of her relationships with any of the other characters, like it feels like there's just not a lot going on, and that's what I find interesting. I don't necessarily think it's a problem. It's just like very different than pretty much any other character except for maybe Cody. I think he's the other one that's kind of like, Laurie's really interesting, his relationship to her and like how it's developed over time, but like he's just not as much of a full character as he is like a nuance to Laurie's like part of the story, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think her role is probably supposed to be grounding all this big stuff, and that's
which is like hard, like that, like that's what happens a lot with like main characters sometimes. That like they might not have like the strongest personality because they have all these other jobs to fulfill for the purpose of the story.
I think this show is like an extreme example of like big things happening around a main character.
Yeah.
I just want to ask here, since I'm not as into the ship necessarily, but like, Caspian's got a lot going for him. Maddie,
he does.
Maddie still needs a lot of life experience to be, to build on. Like, is there not like a worry there?
She's not a hacker. Like, I think her thing, like, if she's gonna add anything to the table for Caspian, she's gonna be like the voice of reason. I think Maddie's a pretty good voice of reason. It's just like, I don't know. I wish she had I wish that voice of reason had like a really big impact outside of just like her father loving her and that being what grounds him to be like the best of the three UIs and to make the ultimate decision himself. You know what I mean? Like I wish, because like Caspian has so much going on. He's such an active participant in the story. I feel like Maddie is just kind of there to help other characters do what they need to do. Not all the time, but like more than like other characters are.
I loved in episode 6. I think Maddie and Caspian they're like bonding over their trauma.
Yeah,
Like
that was great. That
they're
felt
like
like a real
technology
personal
trauma.
moment.
I think that's kind of like where you see it is.
Yeah.
Caspian has all this stuff, and by the way, I think Caspian is the sheltered one. If anything, his life was a lie. Like he needs a lot of real
David,
life
man.
experiences.
He only has 5 people he knows in his whole life.
They kind of have similar experiences with this apocalypse stuff and like really horrific things happening to them and around them because of that. And I think that they kind of share a perspective. They also like get the tech side of it in a way that most other people wouldn't. So I think it could really work. And I think Maddie's probably one of the only people Caspian actually likes. I mean, he like calls her like pretty immediately there at the end.
She's one of the few people who didn't lie to him who's like a peer. She's like the only peer, actually.
Yeah, and it's like Pope's there, but he's like now trying to be a sycophant for him. Like who else does he have? Like he kind of just has Maddie now.
Yeah.
But they can grow together in this new apocalypse world.
When they're so any ship is impossible.
Maybe they'll upload together eventually, right?
God.
Enter the spirit world together. Yay!
Yeah, exactly. One other kind of in this area. I will say one of my experiences early on with the show was I watched the first episode. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be like a big mystery show because there's everything going on in Caspian, but it's also, I think there's a huge mystery with Maddie's dad, and is Maddie's dad alive, and what's going on with his dad, and is he the same person? And then I thought the show very quickly answered all the questions with the dad in like 2 and 3. So I think instead of a big mystery show, and they also answer Caspian, and they've resolved Caspian in 5, but that was a big component of the season. I think this is more of a thriller than a mystery, this show. And I kind of thought it was going to be a big mystery type of show early on. And I initially was disappointed, and I had to get over that. But what it is great as well. It's possible they could have expanded the David stuff. They could have drawn that out more.
Well, and I would say like the David reveal like ties into the overall conspiracy with UIs and logarithms. So like it's not like it's its own separate thing.
Yeah, it raises, further questions in terms of like a personal mystery. Like they could have had the dueling, what's going on with Caspian, what's going on with Maddie's dad. They could have drawn that out. That would have been another way to kind of structure the season. The first short story gives the answer right away too, so I think they're just trying to adapt that. But yeah, I did. Yeah, Michelle, what do you think? Do you think like to me it ended up being more thriller than a mystery? What do you think of that?
I mean, I would agree because, like you said, they answered a lot of mysteries like halfway through the show, which I prefer because if you have like a reasonable hunch, I would rather know in 5 episodes than have to wait till the end to have that revealed to me. Because I feel like that's like more the standard thing, and I like being surprised. And I feel like this show is very good about being like, oh, you thought this thing, bam, here's the answer. All right, we gotta move on. What else is gonna happen now? We have all this time left for other things. Like I do like the pacing in that sort of way. And it never seemed to like it had fun with the questions and the feeding you information, but the more philosophical existential stuff was happening all the time in the background anyway, so it's not like that was the only main point the show was going for. So I mean I would say the show is very thrilling, so I would agree it's a thriller more than a mystery.
It was definitely surprising that they revealed the clone in episode 5. I'd never seen it that fast. So I think it's kind of refreshing. Yeah, you'd expect it to be the finale. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think they go in interesting enough directions with Caspian here. Like I think I think the finale scene at the end, like you have to choose. Like, I think they justify it here. He is the biggest role at the end of the story, and you will only get to that by revealing him, or revealing what's going on with him earlier. Do we want to talk about some other things we haven't hit on as much? Chanda, do you want to get into Chanda as character, his role as a villain in the show? Personally, I wasn't even sure if Chanda was going to be the villain until pretty late.
Will his outfit change?
I don't know if this. I don't know where you two watched it initially, but I watched on AMC Plus, and at the end of episode 1, they give you the this season on promo.
Yeah, there's a promo. Yeah. I didn't remember any.
And in there, like they already like giving showing Chanda giving some evil lines, and so then when you meet him for the first time, it's like, oh, okay, so this is the guy that's gonna end up doing some shady stuff. Okay, so that wasn't great for my anticipation of him.
Yeah, they shouldn't have spoiled. Because I think he's kind of a little bit of a like. So in the story, he's more of a blatant villain. He's not as fleshed out. But I found in terms of I didn't disagree with Chanda until the finale. Like I didn't necessarily agree with him, but I thought he was like somewhat reasonable.
So what was your acceptance of the sending all this stuff to the governments?
So the thing with him sending all of them, I mean, it's that he didn't know about the flaw. So given that he didn't know about the flaw, it's like, I guess, somewhat of a reasonable thing. I mean, I don't know. Its whole plan is just so out there in in the episode 6 or whatever. I'm like, I don't even know what to think of it.
Okay, so you were just rolling with it. You're like,
I was kind of rolling with it,
maybe
yeah.
he's got a point.
He doesn't.
None of the other UIs I thought had much better points, I guess, as well.
Okay.
Monologues, I believe, to David and Lori at one point about just like the horrible existential dread of being like alone in the ether, and just how like overwhelmingly terrifying that reality was. So I do get like going from that to the other alternative of like, well, what if a lot of people know how to do this and then I have a lot of friends and I'm not alone anymore? Like on a very like human kind of selfish, desperate level, I totally get in his mind that making sense, even though obviously so much can go wrong and so much did go wrong. But like I get it. I feel like it's relatable even if I don't agree with the decision-making process.
Yeah, and I will say, I guess now that I remembered, in the beginning of episode 4, he does blow up a family, so I guess he should have been a villain for that.
Murder was when I was like, Chanda, I mean, that son and daughter really had nothing to do with this man, and probably the wife didn't know that much either. Yeah. This is a lot.
I should have remembered that. By the way, that's one of my least favorite scenes of the show. I think that they no emotional buy-in, I thought, to that scene, and you don't even know.
They drowned the son in the pool, and then everything.
Well, we don't know. They're like random people, and you don't know it's Chanda first, right? Either, right? Like you guess it's him, but it's not confirmed. I think
it kind of has to be. Well, no, I think you.
Has a grudge against that guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like who else? He's the only character we've seen that guy interact with, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that scene works to be like, okay, like this is the power that these people have in the wrong hands. You know, stuff like this could happen. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to set that up early so that when he sends a nuke out in the finale.
Yeah.
So that's when Chanda loses me. It's like he's like, okay, this isn't my responsibility that I'm gonna send this nuke out. Like it's David, it's his choice to not make me do this, you know. And then that becomes kind of a classic villain thing of like, oh, you made me do this. But I was shocked that he actually sent the nuke out, like, and he was actually gonna blow up a ton of people in the finale, because I thought he was like somewhat logical before that, right? Like, and this, I think at this point he's like, he loses me in terms of being like
but logic is a very non-nuanced thing sometimes, right? It's like this is my objective at any cost, and I feel like that's really where he was coming from. Plus, again, if we go back to the little backstory we have about him, if he grew up really angry and he didn't really have any friends and he worked alone all the time for a giant corporation, like his sense of empathy might be like pretty shot, and so he wouldn't be as immediately concerned about like how could this affect like all of humanity, like even wanting to uplift people if it was for a very specific selfish purpose of like, I don't want to be alone, how these other people feel about being here be damned. Like that kind of plays into like his personality and what we know about him. Like it's understandable, it's not a great look, but it does kind of make sense how he would get there from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And it kind of ends up being justify like his goals and stuff. And I think
his specific goals matter more than everyone else.
Yeah. So all this being said, in terms of like losing me as like a sympathetic character, I think he's a great. I love him as a villain, as a character.
Like he's fun to think about. Like he's fun to watch. Like, and I do think they see like that kind of like self-importance a little bit from the beginning when he has like that meeting with the competitor, right? Like he's looking out, Chanda's looking out for Chanda's best interest at the end of the day, and that at least remained true while he was in his human flesh body, and it became even more exacerbated when he was a UI, I would say.
Yeah. I thought he was really interesting. His goal potentially of trying to build this virtual world that he was working on before, very Westworld, what we're doing here.
It's crazy house he built floating in the sky. I love it when it's like, it's algorithms. I can make the craziest house I want, and this is going to be my home base.
Yeah, I like that as a villain motivation. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to upload everyone so we can have this utopia in the cloud. Like, I think that's a legitimate force in moving forward with the story here. And any other Chanda thoughts?
One nice human moment they sprinkled in. He calls his mom, and like it's like I feel so lonely, and like they're like having a little phone conversation. I thought that was just a nice touch to
Yeah,
flesh
him
it out
calling,
a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, they had
And he
a few
wants
scenes
her
in
to
there.
leave the area
Yeah.
when her safety is in danger, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree. I liked all that. And then, him entering the virtual world, as we talked about in the beginning. Yeah, I think the show spent a lot of energy fleshing Chanda out, and I think it paid off. How about Lori and Cody? Cody as a show invention. Lori's not very fleshed out in the book, but it's like I said, I love their backstory. That of Lori being uploaded and together their song together. Any other thoughts on them?
I will say I feel like as characters I never really latched onto them, but I think that they were involved in some interesting conversations. I actually really like the connection that Cody and Ellen have because like they're both the spouses
Yes,
of people who have been
spouses.
uploaded, and so like they're like the only people in in on Earth who can understand each other in that way. And so like their conversations, like Ellen trying to talk through like how do you like deal with this, and then like also later on like they have to like weigh together like what do we do with these UIs if they go out of control, like are we able to like pull the plug on them. It's like that kind of stuff definitely like got me. That was like Cody's most interesting moments, and I think also like near the end, like Cody and Lori saying goodbye to each other, and that conversation they have about like like when Lori got into a coma, like she was already like falling out of love, but now like in the virtual world, like they've been able to rebuild that relationship. So if they reset, like that all goes away, and like, well, so would you even want to reset if you knew that was going to happen? So like that conversation felt very emotionally charged. I really like that. So like there are like moments that's like, yeah, this works, but then like there's other like the problem is that like they make Lori because of the flaw like be very erratic, and so like it's kind of hard to always know like where she's coming from on things, and so
I
that makes it
love
a
that
little
about
hard.
her though.
Okay.
I love how messy Lori was. More mess. Give me more mess.
Yeah,
Book
and I think
lady.
that's the thing is she's not like presented antagonistically like Shonda, but at the same time she comes
But
across
at the
very
same time,
she comes across very amorally towards the end of the
yeah,
times.
Chaotic, yeah.
which I like for her.
Yeah, I like it. I love Lori. I like Cody too. I think he's a successful character. I agree with Alex on the relationship there. I think the foundation of them is great. I think it's just really interesting from Cody's perspective. He is like just like in the context of Lori, but I think that all of that is really interesting. And it's like, okay, Cody, you should probably like have a life outside of this, but also kind of understandable getting wrapped up in all of it. So I think that if they continue Cody's character now that Lori is dead, maybe forever, maybe not, I think that would be very interesting if we saw Cody outside of the context of Lori and what he would do.
Also, there's that moment where they're trying to do the funeral for Lori, and Cody's just not having it, and he becomes an asshole to the family, like your dad is gonna die, dude, and then he gets kicked in the balls. I loved it.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about those. Thank
I forgot
you.
about that too. That's good. What else we got here? We could any other comments on Logarithms, the company? I'll say about the Logarithms employees, I did not know the difference between Pope and Van Leeuwen for a while, and all of these people. Pope seems to be very important, but I don't think I understand.
He has a very boring face in every like. I will say this for Lori, she is my favorite character design of any of the characters in the show.
Yeah,
I just
she's
love
really cool.
her look. Pope just looks like some guy, which makes it hard to remember who he is.
Yeah,
At
all
least
the
Carrie had
Logarithms
like
people.
glasses, so you could remember.
Yeah, what about Carrie and Renee as Caspian's parents?
I loved it. It was so fucked up. Like they hate each other. They had to be fake parents for 17 years, and then like Carrie gets in too deep and he starts to love his fake son, but he like blows it out of the water and in these very like unsubtle ways. But like that the end he's there at the logarithms building, like, oh, is he does he have clearance again? Like, did they decide he's fine even though he like really went Rambo for a while? I love them. They're such a mess, and they're way more unpredictable than I expected. But again, it's like, yeah, this system is full of so much unpredictability, making human people known to be very flawed and make bad decisions for a very important mission. Like, of course, it's all gonna go wrong, but that's what's so great about it. I do wonder if Carrie and Caspian can have some kind of semblance of a relationship after this, because it seemed like they were on the best terms. Like Renee, he really was like, nah, you lied to me, you suck, fake mom. But he seems like a little more okay with Carrie, so I wonder if that's something that could be explored more in season 2. Because I would like for Caspian to have some semblance of family at any cost, kind of, if like, you know, he's open to it. It's like, yeah, Carrie's not his bio dad, but he did like raise him, even if it was like kind of a lie. Now it doesn't have to be a lie. Now it could be like a real relationship, and that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Like, what if he stays in charge of the company, Caspian? What people does he keep around?
Yeah, like what could Carrie offer him in terms of perspective? Because he does seem like more honest about how things are than pretty much anyone else. Because he doesn't care, like, really.
He does fire both of them in the last episode, right?
He did, but like he also sat in the chair, so it's like, well, maybe he's changing his mind about law stuff. We're not sure.
Yeah, in the beginning of the finale, he says, "I'm not solving the flaw," and then at the end, he's
so he
solving
sits in the
flaw,
chair.
so.
So like maybe he'll be like, "I miss Carrie. Bring him back to me. I need to talk to him."
It's a reading of the finale is like he gets convinced / forced into this position for the good of everyone, where he is going to ultimately take up the mantle of what everyone wants, and so maybe everyone comes back into the fold. That would be bad, though. And his real family should be Maddie. So he should just go to Maddie's family, honestly.
She could be a very interesting rock that forwards his progression as an interesting character. But also, I don't know. I kind of wish he could do that for her. Which, like, again, if he makes a third daddy, maybe that's when Maddie's really going to crack and do some things just on her own for herself and not for anyone else. Which would be great. I would love that.
Seeing Maddie's react, yeah, I guess that's the forced like plot thing of how they're going to interact again. Is he's going to revive her dad? Yeah, how is she going to react? That's super interesting.
Cross the line. You'd 100% be crossing the line if he did that. She'd be so mad. Can't bring Dad back without permission. Little potential spoiler in the second story. David does die, and Maddie like has a backup of like his formative memories, and then like combines that with his core memories combined with the backup of him, so they actually kind of revive him. So maybe they can bring him back to current state, not just an old state. I don't know. That's what I'm wondering too. Like if David's like reset and he doesn't like remember who a lot of these people are because he won't have met them, this third copy of him. Like I wonder if it'd be easier to get him on Logarithm's side, since he's not the same version. Like that could be really interesting. I mean, same with like Chanda. Even if they have a backup of him before he gets super villainous, like they could use him in a completely different way. He could turn out very differently.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty extreme to like revert a character back to the beginning of the season. Yeah. It's like pretty screwed up in a way you think the show would be interested in doing that.
Yeah, it's like very messy morally, but it's very interesting story-wise.
What's in David though? He like wasn't like he was just talking in emoji in the beginning. I don't even know how it manifests.
Yeah, I wonder. But maybe like Caspian can like fast track that because he's big brain.
Yeah,
boy,
I guess the show presented as like he was being suppressed. I think like by only being in logarithms. But once he got freed, so maybe just back him up and free him right away. Yeah. Okay, that'll be interesting. Okay, let's get into the miscellaneous last things territory.
Well, just one thing I want to mention with Renee. Of all the ridiculous stuff in this show, the idea that you would choose the person you're having sex with to raise your clone is an interesting
That was. I mean, you're so smart. You lose sense of normal stuff. That's my answer to that. You're so high above in a very certain kind of intelligence. Your social intelligence has not caught up. You make dumb decisions like that.
You're so hot and sexy. Wouldn't you like to raise me as a baby?
Yeah, like, seriously though.
I forgot that this was the thing. Okay.
You know, like relationship. I don't like know how like into that Steve Jobs was, but I think he was into it as much as he could have been into it with like literally anyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Any could relate to that. Could relate to anything else. Michelle, any thing still top of mind for you?
I really hope the show like continues the exact same story stuff for season 2 that it concludes with season 2, because like I would like to see different stories still in like a sci-fi thriller vibe, dealing with different kinds of concepts. I think that could be fun. I feel like I don't want this story to overstay its welcome, I guess. And 8 episodes isn't a lot of more time, but like there's like a lot. Like I guess I hope that like the plot doesn't get like so complicated with like international warfare stuff that we lose track of like a lot of the personal character relationships with each other. But I'm curious to see how they're going to handle it.
Yeah. I think it'll stay grounded. I hope so. But yeah, that is going to be really interesting. I have a high level thing I haven't mentioned.
Ooh, tell us.
I think the branding for this show is really bad. Pantheon, the name, I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean,
the intro credit sequence.
If you Google
I don't like that.
Oh, interesting. But I was gonna say, you Google Pantheon, it doesn't really show up very high. There's a lot of other.
Yeah, that's not even why though. It's like, why is the show called Pantheon? It's a pantheon of God. It's the opening scene is like the teacher explaining gods battling each other, which is a metaphor for the UIs who are gods. That's like such a stretch. None of the books are called Pantheon. Like it's not something they got from the. Why did they end up with this name? Just call the show Uploaded. Like Uploaded Intelligence. Like
no,
Uploaded
Intelligence is not a sexy title. Pantheon at least is a sexy title. Uploaded
but
is not
Uploaded has to do with something.
Uploaded sounds like a rom-com about people falling in love with AIs. It sounds like Her. That's what Upload sounds like. That's very confusing.
Also, I'll just say there's an Amazon show already called Upload 2 years ago.
Oh, there you go.
Uploaded. Speaking of Her, by the way, I wanted Alex's take. Is Cody and Lori, is this a Her situation?
God.
Yes.
Even though it's not artificial intelligence, it's a upload intelligence of someone you know.
But she is still like, this version of her is completely online. It's not like a physical flesh at all. So I think in that sense, it is the same.
Yeah, and they do talk about using tools together to, pleasure themselves.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of like Her too. Yeah.
So would Lori have left him for another UI? Is that how that movie ends? I don't remember.
Also, Cody is about on the same level of loser as Joaquin Phoenix in that movie too. So.
Okay, Cody is less of a loser than.
I would say Cody's less of a loser. Alex, he's just a normal artist guy who ended up being with an incredibly brilliant woman.
And Joaquin Phoenix is a guy who writes greeting cards. Like,
no,
that's worse.
Is way less. I think Cody's got more going on, and he's like a more interesting, fun person. He's not that interesting, but he's more interesting than Joaquin Phoenix. It's a low bar, but he clears it.
I think that was all I had to say. Why Pantheon? Like, why? Like, just name it something. I don't know. Anything. Something related to technology.
What were you saying about the opening sequence? You didn't like that either?
It's just pictures of like statues, and there's a heartbeat. I really don't like heartbeats in things. It stresses me out, so I didn't like that.
I didn't know this about you in 7 years. I don't like heartbeats.
There's never been like such a blatant heartbeat in something like that. Like da 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 da. Like no. But anyway, none of it has anything to do with what's going on here.
Some intros overstay their welcome in terms of length. This one gets like really right to it. It's very quick. I like that.
I love that they put a skip intro button on AMC Plus. It's like 2 seconds. Like, what am I skipping?
Watch it. Just watch it for the fun music. It glitches out. It's fun.
The first short story is called "The Gods Will Not Be Chained." I don't think you can call it that though. So I understand why we're changing the name.
Was titled that.
Yeah, and then the finale is called "The Gods Will Not Be Slain," which is the finale title, which is the second book.
Okay.
But
God in
yeah.
it. It's gonna just read as a very different kind of show. All the religious people are gonna come. They're gonna be very confused by the sci-fi thriller. I feel like Pantheon's not the worst title. It's just kind of confusing. But it's better than calling it like Ethernet, you know? Like it could have been way worse.
I think it's a bad title also for an AMC Plus show. Like if like you're trying to convince people to watch this, having a more descriptive name would be better. If it was like more widely available, maybe it'd be a better name. So I think you need to show them a trailer. I guess you can't just say watch this.
You show them the first episode on YouTube. That
was a good move. That was a good move. Alex, any random things?
Yeah, so I got a couple things here. First of all, the music choices in this show are very on the nose a lot of the time, and sometimes that works. I think the usage of "Alive" by Pearl Jam is very effective, and that them singing it together was really nice. I think the Promise is a good use there with Cody and Laurie. Other times it gets a little funky. Mr. Roboto being used in a montage, it just felt the tone felt off there. Like I love Mr. Roboto, but it's like 80s cheese slapped in this very serious drama.
By the way, I think that was supposed to be a silly scene. I think that's what they're going for. But
at least to me, I didn't really get much silliness from the show overall. So when that came in, I was like, okay.
Right. That's why I'm saying I think it is like tonal problems. Like I think it tries to be silly sometimes, but it's like it's pretty jarring.
Yeah, and the finale, the "Don't Dream It's Over" cover. The cliche of slowing down a happy 80s song into something moody and evil.
I love it, Alex. It's the kind of nonsense I love. I love it when they do it in trailers. I love it when they do it here. All the serious moodiness. Yeah, let's go. This isn't the version you remember.
No, you can't end it with this.
Yes, they can, and they did.
I get on paper it makes sense. Like you put a brooding song over a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's brooding.
But they just
Alex, this is exactly
why people
like AMVs. It's corny as heck, but there's some
that was an AMV at the end.
Deep inside, yes. Well, I was kind of like, I could make a really stupid AMV with the song, but that's what's great about it. Let people have their fun. That's what I say. I defend the music choice.
Alex, I tried Shazamming the cover at the end, and nothing came up. So I think did they make this cover for the show?
Yes, let's go. Deep Pockets AMC.
They're like, we like this idea so much, we're gonna commission
Don't Dream
it.
It's Over. Yes, I can.
Hell yeah.
What a
I
brilliant
support it 100%.
No, my favorite music choice was "When in Rome" for the backstory, though.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Also, there's a song that plays when they first upload David, like they've recovered him from the company, and it's how does it feel? Like that was like unique enough, and it still fit the scene. It was like okay, like this feels very emotional, like it fits there. So like there are good choices in here, but there's just other choices that just made me lose my mind. So besides the music, just a couple of other minor characters we haven't really talked about. There's Justine, for her, Maddie's friend from school, who like drives her around and stuff. I thought she was fun, she
was great. She was so fun.
Yeah. So again, we talk about Maddie doesn't have much of a life. Her connection with Justine is something you can build on. Like there's a little bit there. Like she can have her own life outside of all this.
Yeah, she's there at the end.
But again, I feel like Maddie's like there, and Justine's just like so much fun to observe how she reacts to realizing everything's insane. Yeah, she's such like Justine is such a good straight man, but Maddie's just kind of. What's interesting about Maddie is her relationship to Justine. Unfortunately, It feels like the same continuation of a lot of how Maddie interacts with other characters.
Yeah, so she's around, and yeah, I love that Gabe, who is Ellen's person she's dating, and he just like exits the show entirely.
Poor
Like,
Gabe. Hope he's doing all right.
And like the thing is, like Ellen and David don't even they reconcile, but they're not like dating anymore. So like she could totally go back to Gabe, and I think David would be sort of okay with it after that conversation they had. They just didn't bother bringing him back.
Too much
That's
other
that's how
plot,
season 2 it's gonna open, and it's like, hey, Gabe's back.
season 2, bring Gabe back.
Yeah.
They reconciled off screen. That's they're not reconciled. They got back together.
Yeah. So yeah, those are just my random thoughts. But Pantheon's really good. Any complaints I have, musically or otherwise, are very minor. But this is all a good experience.
Nice. Last criticisms from me, random stuff. The flaw. I don't understand why it impacted the two. So Chanda seems fine from the flaw. Oh, he was uploaded later. He's doing so much stuff. Why is he not degrading as much as the other two people?
Good point.
He's doing so much stuff.
He's doing. He's the most extra, and he's like launching a nuke. Like, shouldn't he be degrading by now?
Grew his hair out, made a big house out of nowhere. Yeah, he should have been glitching a little. I think that's fair.
Codes.
The flaw is like an annoying like TV like plot thing they needed to insert. It's not in the book, so I hope they solve it pretty quickly. I hope we get integrity to everyone because it's kind of annoying me.
I did briefly like the discussion they had about. I think Caspian had about like why should we fix the flaw? Like, isn't it a good thing that there's like a time limit to how long these things last? Like, I that's one thing that I wish they maybe dug a little bit more into. But I get that they couldn't because like you by that point you already have the emotional connections to the UIs. You already know that's like it feels kind of cruel. But at the same time, it's like maybe that is a good thing. I don't know.
No, I think that'll be relevant for next season. Like, do we want to give, like, is he going to want to give integrity to everyone else, or is he gonna, like, not want to do that? Because having a million gods probably not the best idea. Having one god, is that, I think all of these questions will become relevant here. Other dumb minor thing, so they install, in the Mr. Roboto scene, they install the servers into the random house. And it's like, okay, obviously David's in like his former house. Like, who would be too stupid to not know that? But then, and then they have a tracking program, and they're like, okay. But then they subvert the tracking program, and it's like, oh, I don't know where David is. I can't find them anymore. Logarithms, like, we're not going to check his house. He's a mystery forever.
Well, Waxman is in a weird spot this entire show, right? Because like he works for Logarithms, but he's technically rooting for David. So it's like he's
they're best friends.
Yeah, so like
I guess at some point he doesn't want to find him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's doing the bare minimum to like give up.
Oh, so he's like barely trying. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what's going on there. But like it is a weird thing for him to try to ride that line for the entire season.
Yeah, maybe they're going for that. I don't think that this was very well fleshed out. Yeah, that's the whole servers thing. They spent a lot of time on it. It is a big thing in the book, but it's like setting up his server. But I don't know. I'm kind of done with servers now. Like let's move past that.
What's past servers?
In the story, they can put like 10% of themselves on this server, 10% of themselves on this server.
That's just more servers.
Well, you don't need to focus on one server. Just spread out everywhere.
Torrenting, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that could be interesting.
Spread it out, less traceable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I think there was a few things maybe more like that I don't even remember. But the show just moves very fast, so that's kind of inevitable. But yeah, overall, I mean. So much fun. This is like already like a long discussion and could be way even longer. And I didn't even get to all the philosophy section of my notes even. I mean, we talked a lot about it. Is there anything?
Yeah, would you want to be uploaded?
Rather than dying, yes. But I don't think it's me. So I don't think that would be me. I think that'd be a different person. Yeah.
You cannot be uploaded.
Right. So, but here's what I was thinking about though, Michelle. That's a different person. If you're uploaded person, which the show I don't, if that's a different person, what about you versus like 10 years ago? That's the next step. What about you? You're in the same body, but
wait, like me from the past?
Yeah. Are you the same person as you from the past?
No, they're not the same person. Not on a one-to-one.
Yeah, but people talk about that in terms of like a theoretical thing, like, oh, I'm such a different person, but like literal, your like literal identity, like.
Yeah, you literally are different though. You have like what, like if it was like half my lifespan, like those extra 15 years matter.
Is that equivalent to like, oh, I'm gonna clone myself? Oh, me versus me
No,
10 years ago, 20
no,
years
it's
ago.
completely different. I think the clone thing is. Oh, wait, are you talking about Caspian again? Or are you talking about like AI stuff? Because like Caspian's different. I mean, the AI thing or the UI thing is just like, if you can access your reality in this completely different dimensional way, that changes you so much that you just you
agree.
cannot be the same.
Well, it's not just that you have access to all these things. It's that it's a different instance of you, right? Like that's why if you could clone me at my current state, it's
completely
like
different.
my perspective, right? Like is that's not me if you clone someone.
But like even in like in your human body, you can gain very different perspectives and gain a lot of skills over the course of your life that you didn't.
Yeah, but you're limited by being organic.
And I think the show brings this up with the like Lori thing. It's because it's like, oh, that's a different version of me from before. Exactly. But if she was human, would it be different? Her when she didn't love him, her when she loves him now. Is that the same? Is that a different person?
It's a different. Well, yeah, it's the human person. It's different.
But if they were both human, would that be a different person, or is it just an earlier version of her?
They would be different people.
I think that's kind of an extreme take. Like you from like 10 years ago is not you.
Ways they be different. This is the same as twins. The same DNA.
Yeah, but the twin is it's two different instances, you know, and
twins can have different experiences after they're born, right?
You is still you in your body.
That's the point. But like, okay, if there is a divergence, you become a different person. I feel like that's
I kind of think so too, but I think that's that's a pretty out there take compared to how we typically think about things.
It's not saying you're not a person; it's just saying you're a different person that is shaped by.
You have a different identity, like your identity.
Yeah, you have an identity, you have your perspective. Different things happen to you that inform your perception of the world and yourself. It's always going to be different.
So
it's not the same person.
Here's the next step. What about 10 years? Sure. What about like yesterday? You know, like
different person.
I kind of think so. That's like a pretty extreme take. I feel like most people would not agree with that.
Person.
It's really interesting, and I think the show invites that like line of thinking, and that's one of the strengths for sure. Like I had so much fun with that. I think it's also like
how much change are you allowed in a person before they become a different person? You know?
Yeah,
like, because I do think like people on their own change and drastic ways sometimes, and you can still be the same person, at least in my like way of thinking what
you're still you, but you're not the same. That is how I feel.
Okay, well that's still you, yeah, and that's different from different person, you know.
That's what I mean. Like you're a different person, but you're still you.
Okay. So that's more of a convention.
I think we're like definitions are like diverging here. Yeah.
I think all this very interesting, and I hope we lean into this type of thing. I think that's one of the big
because also like can you be a person and not human? Because like for some people those are different things.
That was my big thing. I finally came around to you can be a person, not human, but also like I'm like. Yeah, I feel like human implies body, but personhood can be like more broadly applied. That is my specific way of organizing those labels. But I know that may not be how everyone else feels. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of this the basic concept of the upload intelligence is dependent on you can separate the sense of self from the body. Which I think is probably not true. But yeah, the show.
Not yet. Well, our technology is definitely not there.
Yeah, maybe in 500 years, if humanity survives, we'll have.
We're not going to last that long, Dylan.
No. That's the thing. None of this is relevant.
Maybe 150 years.
No. Some little kid who's like 10 years old is watching Pantheon right now. Is like, whoa, I could do that. And like in 50 years, he's like, I did it.
He'll be the new Steve Jobs. He'll be the new Caspian.
Yeah, and he'll be like, he'll be in front of like the United Nations, being like, I watched Pantheon as a kid, and I changed the world.
I learned all I know from AMC Plus.
You guys remember streaming TV?
No 10-year-old kid is watching AMC Plus. Come on, that's the least realistic thing. Okay. Any final thoughts on Pantheon?
If you like chaos, watch Pantheon.
Chaos as a show. That's the tagline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And chaos is good. Chaos can be good. You should embrace chaos.
If anything, chaos is fun.
Yeah.
So
some real Chandas over here. That's what I mean.
real Chanda. So I hope that becomes a thing.
Okay.
Can I be
there
a
you go.
Lori instead?
I think everyone
Just
probably
you
wants
want
to
to be the coolest looking lady. I get it. It's a big vibe. Yeah.
Okay, that's the new identity. Are you David, Lori?
Are
or
you a Chanda or a Lori? The two genders.
The two genders, yeah. The genders are human and uploaded intelligence. Those
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the next evolution. Okay, that's it on Pantheon. Let us know all of your thoughts on wherever you can comment. Check out our previous podcasts at overlyanimated.com. We're recording this before the first Owl House special comes up, so we'll have some more clone discussion
Speaking of chaos.
very soon.
Woo! Clones are the
I
hottest men. This is what
too.
I'm learning. Yeah.
That's what you got to do. I hope that my pre-Owl House special, I hope that they explain the reason for cloning as much as this show did, which is like, oh, we're trying to do these inflection points and make you the same person, right? Like, what if Bellows?
Goofy Bellows is going to have that conversation 100%.
Yeah, but yeah. So that's episode 5 Pantheon coming in the special. That's what we're hoping for. Overlyanimated.com, comments there. Consider supporting us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thank you to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Anon. And thanks as always to our patron executive producer, Steve Michael M. Phoenician. Yeah, let us know if you watch Pantheon, if you checked it out. I hope more people do. And
tell other people, because it needs the help.
Tell people to get that AMC Plus subscription. Yep, that's what we're hoping for.
Or High Dive.
Apparently people have that. Yeah, High
I
Dive.
don't know what the heck that is.
Yeah, we're not weeb enough to know that High Dive. Okay, there you go. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.